Hey! Hey, you! Yeah, you! Are you an American? Civilian? Christian? Yeah? Okay, come with me and keep your head down. We have to get to the safe house down the road. Stay right behind me. Ready? Okay, let's go. Let's go! Faster! Move it! Get down!
Sir, the civilians are waking up. Which civilians? The latest round of Christians, sir. The ones the mortar almost took out. Yes, very good. Bring them in as they are able. Bring them into the room with the rest. I wish to address them. Very good, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Colonel William Bradford. I am the commanding officer of the 31st Scutum Christi Battalion. As I am sure you are aware, our nation, the United States, is currently in the beginnings of a second civil war. I am here to tell you that you are safe with us. I, as my forefathers before me, serve the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The good corporal and his men are responsible for bringing you all here. For it is love of neighbor and God that motivates these men, as it is the call to love our neighbor that has torn this land apart. The radical pagans have declared open war on all those who seek to end their holocaust of human sacrifice. And so, it falls to us to care for one another, to fight for one another, to love one another, to raise for our children a nation of our own that honors God, lives by His rule, and to protect that nation from foreign invaders. My friends, dear children, I can see the fear in your eyes, the despair, the agony at the loss. My heart breaks for you, for us. But I wish to tell you a tale of my forefather whose name I bear, William Bradford. I wish to tell you a story true, though with some freedom of imagination, about the people that you come from. So gather round, loved ones, and lend me your ears, for tonight we travel back to England before it all began. The wind howls through narrow alleyways. The year is 1608. In the shadows of an English village, a small band of believers gathers in secret, their voices hushed, their hearts alight with a hope greater than fear. They are hunted, watched. The king's men roam the streets, their eyes sharp, their orders clear. Even now, soldiers pass by the alley's mouth, their boots crunching on damp stone. A tense silence falls over the gathered believers. A single candle flickers in the dim room, its feeble light casting shadows against rough wooden walls. The walls of a house that is not a home, but a prison of uncertainty. Their crime? They worship as they see fit, apart from the grand cathedrals and gilded altars of the Church of England. They believe Christ alone is the head of the church, not the king. They believe their souls belong not to crown nor country, but to God. And for this, they are exiles in their own land. Tonight, we go back to the beginning, before the storm-tossed crossing, before Plymouth Rock, before the Mayflower Compact, before 1620. This is your story. England, the late 1500s. The air is thick with a scent of damp stone and burning tallow. Queen Elizabeth I has stamped out the last embers of Catholic rule, but her Church of England is no sanctuary for dissenters. The priests wear fine robes, the bishops bow before the will of the crown, and any who dare challenge the Queen's authority are marked for ruin, and among them a growing number who call themselves separatists. In the village of Scrooby in Nottinghamshire, a young man named William Bradford sits on a crude wooden bench, his heart pounding. The room is lit by a dozen flickering candles. Faces lean in close, their breath rising in the chill of the night. They listen. The words of the preacher, Richard Clifton, are spoken with the conviction of a man prepared to die for the truth.
Brethren, we are called to stand apart, to be not of this world. The word of God is clear. His church is not built on the decrees of kings. We must worship in spirit and truth, as Christ commanded.
For men like Clifton, for John Robinson, for William Brewster, the Church of England was but another throne of man, corrupted by power, and so they gather in homes, barns, wherever they can, seeking only to worship as the apostles did. But the law is merciless. Attendance at the King's church is mandatory. To refuse is to invite ruin, arrests, fines, imprisonment. Some are cast into dark dungeons, left to rot. Some are stripped of their homes, their livelihoods. Others vanish, never to be seen again. William Bradford is only 12 when he first hears the preaching of the separatists. Orphaned young, raised by stern uncles, he is drawn not to the pageantry of state religion, but to the simple power of the scriptures.
I was but a child when the Lord stirred my heart. The words of the preacher seemed to burn like fire, and I knew I could not live as before.
By 17, Bradford is one of them, a separatist, an enemy of the crown, and so they must flee. By 1607, it had become clear that these clandestine congregations would have to flee if they wanted to survive. The separatists began planning an escape to the Netherlands, a country that Brewster had known from his younger, more carefree days. For his beliefs, William Brewster was summoned before his local ecclesiastical court. At the end of the year, he was fined £20. He did not appear in court, nor did he pay the fine. But immigrating to Amsterdam was not to be easy. A statute passed under Richard II decreed none could leave England without a license, something Brewster, Bradford, and many other separatists knew they would never be granted. So, they tried to slip out of the country unnoticed. The wind howls through the dunes, whipping against cloaked figures crouched in the darkness. A ship lies anchored beyond the shallows, a beacon of escape. Or so they hope. They arrange for a ship to meet them at Scotia Creek, where its muddy brown waters spool toward the North Sea. For months, they have planned this moment. Families have sold their homes, left behind all they knew, trusting a ship's captain who promised them passage. The women and children go first, ferried to the ship under cover of night, but as the men wade into the waves,
Seize them! In the name of the king!
a trap. They have been betrayed. They're clapped in irons, taken back to Boston in small open boats. On the way, the catch-pole officers rifled and ransacked them, searching to their shirts for money. Yea, even the women further than became modesty. According to Bradford, they were bundled into the town center to be made a spectacle, and wonder of the multitude who came wandering from all sides to behold them. By this time, they have been relieved of almost all their possessions, books, clothes, and money. After their arrest, the would-be escapees were brought before magistrates. Some were held in the cells of Boston's Guildhall. They are jailed, questioned, humiliated, and threatened. But they do not break. And when they are released, they do not stop. The year is 1608. A bitter night on the eastern coast of England. A group of men, women, and children stand shivering on the shore, waiting for a ship that may never come. They organize a second attempt to flee the country, this time from Killinghome Creek, 60 miles up the Lincolnshire coast from the first failed attempt. The women and children arrived the day before on a boat from Scrooby, down the River Trent up the estuary to the River Humber. Brewster and the rest of the male members of the congregation traveled overland. They rendezvous at Killinghome Creek, where the Dutch ship out of Hull was to be waiting. Things went wrong again. The women and children had arrived a day early. The sea had been rough, and when some of them got seasick, they took shelter in a nearby creek, and as the tide went out, their boats were seized by the mud. By the time the Dutch ship arrived, the next morning the women and children were stranded, while the men who had arrived on foot walked anxiously up and down the shore waiting for them. The Dutch captain sent one of his boats ashore to collect some of the men and take them back to the main vessel. The boat was dispatched to pick up another load of passengers when William Bradford says, "A great company, both horse and foot, with bills and guns and other weapons appeared on the shore, intent on arresting the would-be departees. If they were caught, they would be imprisoned." For months they have tried to escape England. Twice they have been betrayed, jailed, their money stolen by corrupt captains. But tonight, they try again. At last, a boat emerges from the mist. The captain signals. The men wade through the freezing surf, helping women and children into the vessel. But before all can board, a shout pierces the darkness.
Halt! In the name of the king!
Soldiers rush the shore. They shout and scatter the women, men, and children. Those left behind, wives, daughters, mothers, sons, are seized. The men aboard can do nothing but watch as the tide carries them away. They can but weep as they are powerless to turn back the tide that has led to this moment. How will they ever be made whole again? But the ship presses on, out into the stormy North Sea, but more bad luck was in store. The ship is caught in a hurricane-force storm and has been blown almost to Norway. After 14 days, they finally landed in the Netherlands. Back at Killingholm Creek, most of the men who had been left behind had managed to escape. The women and children were arrested for questioning, but seeing as how no constable wanted to throw them in prison, they had committed no crime beyond wanting to be with their husbands and fathers. Most had already given up their homes. The authorities, fearing a backlash of public opinion, quietly let the families go. Brewster and John Robinson, another leading member of the congregation who would later become their minister, stayed behind to make sure the families were cared for, until they could be reunited in Amsterdam in the next few months. Brewster, Robinson, and others escaped across the North Sea in small groups to avoid attracting attention. Settling in Amsterdam, they were befriended by another group of English separatists called the Ancient Brethren. This 300-member Protestant organization led by Francis Johnson, a firebrand minister who had been a contemporary of Brewster at Cambridge. He and other members of the Ancient Brethren had done time in London torture cells. And though Brewster and his congregation of some 100 began to worship with the Ancient Brethren, the pious newcomers were soon embroiled in theological disputes and left. Bradford said the flame of contention engulfed them. After less than a year in Amsterdam, the discouraged flock picked up and moved again, this time to settle in the city of Leiden, near the magnificent church known as St. Peter's. Leiden, a city of tolerance, of freedom. For the first time, the separatists breathed without fear. For 11 years, they build a new life. They work as weavers, carpenters, printers. They marry. They raise their children. They worship freely, but hardship follows them still. The work is backbreaking. Poverty is constant. Their English ways are fading, swallowed by Dutch customs. And as the years pass, a new danger rises, not from kings or bishops, but from within. Their children, born in this foreign land, begin to stray. The world presses in, tempting them to forget the God of their fathers. The language of their prayers turns from English to Dutch. The customs of their fathers fade beneath the ways of a foreign land. And so, they come to a decision.
We are pilgrims in this world, my brethren. Our home is not in England, nor in Holland, but in the kingdom of our God.
A new hope takes root, a place where they may worship freely, a place across the ocean. The new world, the journey will be dangerous, the wilderness unknown, but they have seen the hand of God deliver them before, and so they begin the preparations. They do not know what awaits them, the bitter cold, the hunger, the graves that will mark the first winter. They do not know the trials ahead, the treaties, the betrayals, the wars, and the blessings. They know only this: they are called. And when the Mayflower set sail in 1620, They will not go as wanderers, but as men and women with a purpose, as exiles seeking a promised land, as pilgrims. Next time we set sail.